Hey Liz, welcome to the show today.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. So nice to be here with you.
Fantastic, and I know your husband fairly well, Matt Faircloth as well, and it's very unusual that both spouses are, involved in the business, not just in the real estate side, but also, in the influencer space, which is really cool. Why did you decide to also become active alongside Matt?
Yeah, and it's funny because, I actually read Rich Dad Poor Dad first, and I'm like, you got to read this book. And I think I dragged him to the RIA meeting. So I kind of like, he tagged along with me at first. When we decided to, we strategically said one of us needs to keep working, and then one of us needs to, we're doing this together. We started an LLC together. My father loaned us our first our down payment in renovation, 30,000 at the time. So, that was before we were married. So we went in this together. It was like 50-50. We're in this together. And at the time, we said one of us really needs to be focused on, taking care of our mortgage and bills. And one of us needs to be leading the company full time. And out of the two of us, I actually enjoyed what I did. And he didn't. So that was kind of an easy way to figure out, who was going to kind of take on full time. I, you know, and then I ended up joining him, Michael, a few years later. I quit my job
Mhm.
and worked with him full time. And then I left that and tried, and I got back into the work. So I've had many different roles with in our business, whether it's full time or strategic, or like I am now, I'm part of the team, but I'm not as in the trenches of day to day with some of our projects. So, we've always shared the same values, and I think that's really important. We come at things differently. We have different personalities, and those sort of things where you can butt heads, but we value the same things. So that's always helped us, and we've always wanted to really like do something unique and different, and just step it up in terms of our generation. And we were given so much from our parents, but we said, okay, how can we take this to a different level? But we've always been very aligned there. It wasn't like he was dragging me or I was dragging him.
So, what is your advice of the spouses getting on the same page?
Yeah, and when we first met, we were writing business plans. We were in our like mid
You
twenties,
guys are nerds.
We're totally nerds. If
Oh,
most people like partying, like having a great time, and we're like, we got to write our business plan. I'm like, oh my God, I look back, I'm like, God, we're having more fun now than we did sometimes in our 20s, but that's okay. But yeah, I think a lot of it is, I was a big personal growth person, and him as well. I mean, I read like Waking the Giant Within. We both loved different things, and we had a lot of conversations around where do we want to be in 5 years? What do we want for our life? And I think that's a big thing couples need to do, whether they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, really, quite honestly. But where do you want to be? And what do you want to be doing? What do you value? I think people do value similar things. I don't think people go about them the same way, though. I think it also helps. My work, Michael, was also in personality, understanding people's personalities. I did a lot of corporate training. I was like literally an expert in knowing people's personalities. So I used that early on too. Like, I think that's a big thing for spouses, especially if they, value each other. Who's more cautious? Who's more a risk taker? The guy's not always more of a risk taker, and the one's not always cautious. That sometimes the tables are turned. And I have a lot of women in our community who often say, "I'm literally dragging my husband along because he doesn't want anything to do with this business." So it's really about knowing who's more cautious, who's more of a risk taker. The other big thing I would recommend is people do a lot of personal growth weekends together. I mean, we went to like one thing is called Landmark Forum, where you look at yourself and you understand yourself and how you're wired. We did a weekend on your money personality. That was huge, right? If you don't know one another's like money stories and your hiccups on money, I don't see how anyone could be successful in real estate investing if they're not really clear on how their spouse looks at money, values money. My husband's more of a spender. I'm more of like a saver to a fault sometimes, right? Where he's more of a in the other way. So knowing that about each other, like, so I think the more tools, weekends, work you can do on yourselves and your relationship to get clear on who you are, where you're going, what do you value, and it's a lot of work. It's not like it doesn't happen by osmosis and just chit chatting with your neighbors. Like, you got to do the work if you really want like something different in life.
yeah. For in our situation, my wife, we homeschool our four kids, so she's really I sometimes jokingly say runs that side of the business, right?
Yeah.
And she does a really good job, and she kind of let me do the financial stuff.
Yep.
And she didn't really never got into personal development stuff. She was reading curricula and that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and that's great. It just didn't was important until you mentioned some of these retreats that you did. Until we went on a goal setting retreat,
Mm-hmm.
and she was kind of the unwilling or slash willing victim that comes. She just did it kind of as a favor to me because I was like, you have to go and set goals together.
Yeah.
She goes, oh my gosh, what a bunch of horse manure, and that shifted her perspective on goal setting actually.
Yeah.
And so now, not that we were on the same page. I think you said you're aligned by values. I think that's really important. You have to be aligned in values. You want the same things in life, but then you got to take it a step further. It's okay. What exactly do you want? You have to kind of architect it. It sounds like you guys were very intentional in doing that. We didn't really start getting very intentional until about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago as more of a family. I've been a little more intentional a little longer than that, but not as a family. So I think that's been a game changer for us as well. So
Yeah.
So how did you guys split up your roles in? So you got this duplex, you got the real estate bug. You're like, I got the 5-year plan. And how did you guys split up your roles, and how did you then begin to grow that business?
Well, and coming from the corporate world of knowing that people have different strengths, we all know that, but and that was my expertise. So you would have thought we would have been much more intentional about some of those things. But, I think I'd say unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to say it, but we got into whatever needs to happen, we delineated from there. So, Matt took on, I took on more of an active role, some of our property management, creating processes and systems and putting a process in place, those sort of things. Then, units need to be cleaned. We did that. We literally did everything early on. And it was just like, we both come from very hardworking families. So it's like, my dad cuts his grass. Like, my dad has the money to hire someone to cut his grass. He cuts the grass. It's still to this day. My father's 75. He cuts his own grass. So that's my upbringing, right? So I say that because we could have been or should have been a little more strategic in how you delineate roles, responsibilities. It all comes back to skills. I know this now, but still, skills, experience, and personality, right? And you need to delineate from basis those 3 things. And also just interest, right? So I was doing the bookkeeping, and there was months, Michael, early on that I missed the mortgage payment, because I'm not an analytical person. I'm not that I'm bad with numbers. I would never say that. I actually like numbers. I understand numbers, but I just wasn't good at bookkeeping. I don't know how to say it. It just wasn't a good skill set for me. And that's like, I'm firing you from this job. We are firing you from this job. And there's been times that he's doing something like, you need to stop doing that. You're really good here. So I wish we got it a little sooner in our trajectory of our business and our life. But I think over the years, we really have gotten better with that and gotten better with, okay, this is what you need to be doing. This is what I need to be doing. So, so Matt's great at building relationships and raising money. So we've built a team where we have more operators and more people that are analytical and technical and drivers on the team. Because my husband's more big picture and likes to enroll people and talk to people, and that's what he's good at, right? So, and then for me, there's been roles in the business that we've evolved to for me, like where I'm able to be brought in. Okay, Liz, we really need some help here. Like, let's look at this a little differently. We have a few buildings that we're struggling with, and okay, let's look at this differently. So I've been brought into like creative, like outside the box, but not into the throes of things. I also look at things a little differently because I'm not in the day-to-day. So Matt really uses me as like this strategic view of what's happening, and okay, maybe we need a twist here. And he's putting a fund together now, and I'm kind of more involved in some of those ideas, and let's have a board and just things you learn along the way. So I think you get better over time, but I always say to people, figure out your skills, your experience, your passion, and your personality, and you should delineate basis of that.
My wife and I don't work together very well in a professional environment, right? Because I like to hold people accountable, right? Hey, say, Vivian, where's this thing you said you'd do by 5 o'clock Eastern today? She does not react kindly to that kind of accountability, right? So how do you and Matt do this? Because obviously you're wearing at least 2 hats, right? You're business partners in a professional environment, but then you're also, husband and wife, where your communication and grace period is a little different than, say, an employee or a partner.
Yeah, well, that's why the first time didn't work, Michael. So the first time I quit my job, one, we were just surviving, right? So financially, emotionally, Matt turned to me, is like, if we don't change something, like we're going to get a divorce. And this is like right at the height of the crash. So financially, we're experiencing like, what the hell did you just do, losing your, moving on from your job? And, so at that point, we weren't delineating roles correctly, and we weren't thriving in any part of our business. We just had this small rental portfolio that we were trying to make do and make right. So when I quit the second time, which was 2013, I had my son. And at that point, we started to get into our stride of building out our multifamily. And that's the biggest thing, is when you get focused, like great things happen, right? We were involved with so many different things when the market crashed. And when I left my job first, we were flipping, we were doing this, we were doing that, and we had multifamily properties. So we went all in on multifamily, not went all in, but focused, right? And got really focused on that and building with other people, working with investors, et cetera. And then that grew. And then we saw that happening, like 2010, really things started to get better and our business started to improve. And I said, I'm leaving when we have Zach, because we had our first child, 2013. We were starting to make, more rental income, right? Good things were happening, not perfect, but definitely better than when the market crashed. I said, I'm quitting and I'm going to we talked about this. Are you going to be the primary parent or am I be the primary? Like we had a discussion about this. It wasn't assumed that I was going to be just because I'm the woman. And we talked about it and I said, you know what, I would like to. And he's like, okay. And I said, I still want to do things professionally. I want to help our business. And then quite honestly, what really helped us was me getting involved in a different business that didn't involve my husband. So what really worked the second time is that I'm not that I'm not involved in our real estate business, because I am, but I also have another focus, which is the investor community and really I have another partner, right? And so for us, we thrived so much better as a married couple when we both had kind of like, I don't want to say separate businesses because I am involved, but it's not this, we're literally sitting next to each other every day and I'm holding him accountable. He's holding me accountable. We both kind of we're very similar people, actually. We're very similar personalities. So it just doesn't work when we're both like 100% into something together. We work really well specifically and like strategically and like, Liz, this is a project and we work great, but if I had to work every day with my husband and he had to work with me every day, I don't know if it would work as well, to be honest with you, like day to day into the trenches. That's why I love that I have another business I'm growing and thriving in, because it's giving me space to kind of be who I am with another person. So that's what was different the second time around.
There is probably some level of accountability, but it's not day to day, like you said. It's not like you have daily meetings and daily check-ins, right?
No, we still have monthly business meetings. We still do that. We talk about where we are, what's working, what's not. So we're still having those. Yeah, those are critical.
I think that's a good a good measuring stick for any kind of partnership, even for us with Garrett and Drew at Nighthawk, right? There are certain things that we hold each other accountable on, but really hold each other accountable for the major rocks, right? The major thing that we're going to do this month or this quarter. I'm not going to call Garrett every hour on the hour going, hey, Garrett, how you doing with that? How about now? How's it going? What are you doing with that? Like it would drive him crazy. It would probably drive me crazy as well. And I think if everyone's got their ownership, and like I think the definition of roles is very important. You're going to find the deals. I'm going to find the money, something like that. Right. I think those work very, very well. Things where you're both kind of working on it together. Like first of all, there shouldn't be two of you doing the same thing, even in a professional situation, regardless of your spouse or not.
Duplication. Yeah.
What's your parting advice to investors who are just starting out, women or otherwise?
I think it's so easy, Michael, and I know people probably see this for you too because of your success and Garrett, your success. People look at something and go, wow, that must have been so easy for them. That must have taken just like, I don't know, overnight success. My parting advice is that there's no overnight success. That doesn't happen. And so my point in saying that is that it takes time, it takes energy, it takes, wow, that didn't work. Wow, we just lost some money here. We're getting sued. Like literally all those things have happened and a lot of other things. So just stay the course and don't give up, because it's just, for me, it didn't happen overnight, or for us, it didn't happen overnight. There were a lot of tough things that happened. So don't give up. Literally, just over grit, like just go above beyond with grit and persistence, and you will do just fine in life. That's my opinion.